Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus arcade video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the game Virtua Fighter 5R on the Sega Lindbergh arcade hardware. As you can see, we have the Lindbergh here. It's connected to the power supply, but I actually found a link to a multi-boot called Multi-Boot version 9.6. And as you can see here, it actually works with an Xbox 360 controller, which I actually have right here. This is a wired Xbox 360 controller, but a wireless dongle will work as well, but unfortunately mine stopped working, so I had to get this controller from GameStop. But if we go into Xbox 360 controller supported joystick games, and then we can just go to the HD version of Virtua Fighter 5R. And then when the game does eventually load up, it's going to go through both of the test modes. You'll see the actual game test mode, and then it'll go into the systems test mode, which is the Sega Lindbergh test mode. And of course the camera's having a hard time focusing on this, but you always get this weird screen when you actually load a Lindbergh game. But yeah, that's 100% normal, so nothing to worry about there. But what's going to happen here is it's going to do this network test, which I can actually skip by hitting the jewel in the middle of the controller, which works as a service button. And as you can see, here's the test mode options. There's nothing really that amazing here. You'll see it's set up as a satellite, but it works just fine in that way. Advertise sound on. We can skip the demo, and we can make card start as optional, so the game will not halt if there is no data cards. So then we're going to go ahead and exit out of here. And that's really all that's required. So then we're going to exit out of the menu, and then it's going to do a bunch of other crazy Linux things. And then we're going to get right into the game, and we'll take a look at Virtua Fighter 5R. So let's take... Okay, and as you can see here, here's the whole title screen showing Akira Yuki, the main character, and the two new characters for this game. Of course, Takahashi and Jean Kujo were added as the new characters in Virtua Fighter 5R, and of course they were brought into Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown as well, which is where a lot of people thought that they were actually added. And now there are two modes in here, the Score Attack and the Knockout Trial R. But in this video we're just going to show the Score Attack. And if you noticed in the other video where I showed the intros, I had that bar on the top which actually showed the features that weren't available. But from what I understand, the way that this game actually ran on the Lindbergh, since the screen was 1280 by 768, which was called XGA resolution, it had an extra 48 lines at the top, which were actually what that black bar took up. So in displaying this in 720p, the proper resolution would be to cut that out. And I can already tell when looking at this footage, it looks a lot better without that bar in the way. But to give you a little bit more about this game, it was released in 2008, and there were a few updated versions that were released in 2009 on the Sega Lindbergh, which this was one of those games that you actually, as an arcade operator, couldn't own, as these key chips were actually just rented by the arcade operators, and The only way to really play this, unless you found an arcade cabinet that still ran it and the key chip was still in it, would be to do it through a multi-kit. And now this multi-kit, I actually found a link online where I can download it and then flash the compact flash card and actually play Virtua Fighter 5R. I have a couple bugs I gotta work out in this, some games not working and everything, but at least it lets me play this version of this game I thought I'd never be able to try. And now, other than just the two characters, the other things that this game did was it had changes to some of the stage sizes and shapes, reintroducing breakable wall sections, modification to ground from side, throw escape input, and removal of the punch and kick attack option from offensive moves. But other than that, and of course some rebalancing tweaks, the big change in this version of Virtua Fighter 5 was the addition of the two new characters, which of course many people would just assume were just part of the Final Showdown update, but they were just carryovers from Virtua Fighter 5R. Unlike Virtua Fighter 4 Final Showdown, well, actually,
trust me. Ready?
Now that I think of it, that's exactly like Virtua Fighter 4 Final Tune, but as opposed to that version, which never got released in Japan, this version was the one that never got released outside of Japan. So the version everybody knows is the final version of Virtua Fighter 4 is not, whereas the version of Virtua Fighter 5 that everyone knows is the final version actually is. This mid-step, if you will, just never made it outside of Japan. And graphically, it looks just as great as Virtua Fighter 5 on Sega Lindbergh. But of course, it just adds a few embellishments here and there, and some new stages and stuff. And just I had to mention there, the breakable barriers have been added back into the game. And it goes without saying, but if you've never played Virtua Fighter 5, especially in the arcade, it's just a very beautiful looking game, there's no doubt about that. Especially with stages like this, which you have that atmospheric fog, and it just really lends to the look of the stage a lot more, since you have the power of the Sega Lindbergh, which, at the time of making this video in March of 2020, the Sega Lindbergh hardware is like 15 years old, and I still find myself looking at these graphics and thinking, this game just looks great. And when you really think about it, all you're really dealing with here is a Pentium 4 3GHz processor and a GeForce 7800 with 1 GB of system memory. So it's not like this is the most impressive hardware in the world, but all of you PC enthusiasts have to keep in mind, this didn't have to like run a full version of Windows underneath the game that it was running. It basically runs like the bare minimum of an operating system, just a distro of Monte Vista Linux, and then it would run the game on top of that. So unlike your computer, which has to run a full version of like Windows 7, Windows 10, or whatever the current operating system would currently be for you, this just basically runs enough operating system in order to boot the files. Just command line Linux, as you could see from my beginning there. And as you can see, I actually accidentally left the loss there. But you can kind of see how it is to continue. It's nothing amazing, but as I was saying, it basically just runs a command line Monte Vista Linux underneath the game, which of course is very light, allowing just about all the computer's power to go to running Virtua Fighter 5 here. And of course, Aoi here was added in Virtua Fighter 3. And eventually in that game, I will probably do a gameplay of her just so you can see what she's like in her initial debut, if I have not done so already. And if you remember from my Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection video, those little things with the card readers with the X over them, on Namco System 256 at least, they'll actually show up as gray without the X over if the card readers are present and working. And then, of course, if a card is inserted, they will turn red or blue respectively for player 1 and player 2. And now here is our Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution Edition, Go Hinogami. And the thing I really do love about this game, I know I've probably gushed about this in just about all of my Virtua Fighter 5 videos, just how detailed some of the graphics on the stages are, and how consistent like the frame rate is. The game just runs so nice, at least on the arcade version. I've played a little bit of this on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 when I'd gotten those versions, but I can honestly say I don't really know them as well as I know the Lindbergh version, because I just played this version a heck of a lot more. And I definitely like that KO animation with the the lines going all over the place. It looks like an explosion to tell you that the match is over. But what I was saying is, I haven't really played the console versions too much to know if they run as silky smooth as the Lindbergh version here. But, yeah, this game just runs so nicely. And at the point of making this video, we still don't have any more Virtua Fighter games, and I probably have said that in my other Virtua Fighter 5 videos as well, but I really wish Sega would come back, or, if Sega's unable, allow somebody else to come back and make Virtua Fighter 6, because it's just too long since we've had one of the best fighting games ever in the spotlight. And I know a lot of people actually still play Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown, because that's actually a really good fighting game. And now here is your final stage, which is Akira Yuki, just like in just about every other version of Virtua Fighter 5. And the cool part about Virtua Fighter is that, as far as fighting games go, the actual poly count of Virtua Fighter 4 was not surpassed until Sega made Virtua Fighter 5. So, that just shows how good Sega was with its arcade development. So, eventually when we might actually get Virtua Fighter 6, maybe Sega will outdo themselves again and make like a 4K fighting game that plays very silky smooth and just has the best graphics that any kind of hardware can develop. But, of course, we'll see. And of course, if you're watching this like sometime far in the future and Virtua Fighter 6 is already out, I'm sure it's really fun. The funny thing is, I actually had something like that happen with my Soul Calibur videos, that I kept saying, hey, if Soul Calibur 6 is out someday down the road, it'd be really cool. So if you go back and watch a lot of those videos, you actually would hear me complain that Soul Calibur 6 is not out. And at this point, like, those videos seem kind of out of date because Soul Calibur 6 already is out. So you never know, one day you might be watching this very video or any of my Virtua Fighter videos where I say that Virtua Fighter 5 is the last game in the series at this point, and Virtua Fighter 6 might be the current game. But I was so surprised that when I played this, that I got through Doral so easily in round 1, but of course, I think that really made her angry, so she had to redouble her efforts and beat me up. Because as you can see, from this point on, there's nothing I could possibly do to defeat her. So that's kind of your classic rubber banding AI, where you defeat the enemy, and then the AI redoubles its efforts in order to beat you as terribly bad as it possibly can. And as you can see, she's absolutely relentless, not giving me a chance. And I don't know why this stone version is kind of the version I was chosen. I always thought Doral looked better with that, like metallic one that like reflects the whole world. And no matter what, the final stage is not playable again. Bonus stage is not playable again. You have to beat it in one shot, because that's the only shot that you get. But as you can see here, the credits just kind of show all the characters, even Takarashi and Jeffrey running really quickly, and it just lists all the staff of this version of the game. And I love how Aoi runs. I think that's so cute. But as you can see, Virtua Fighter 5R, many people will say this is like a step in the process that wasn't needed or that doesn't matter. But I just find it cool to finally be able to play some Virtua Fighter 5R and see what this version of the game, basically the half step before Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown was. And as you can see, it actually is a really good thing, and I still find it weird that Vanessa Lewis in Virtua Fighter 4 was African American, and in this version she's kind of white. And I guess Wolf just has a problem running, because he looked like he was seriously struggling there, and then El Blaze just runs past him really quick because he's such a small little guy. But since I hadn't beaten this game before on this board, I got first place because there's nobody to compete against, even though 7 minutes and 34 seconds isn't exactly a great time. But as I was saying, Virtua Fighter 5R is a great game, so if you can play this on some sort of emulation option or on real hardware like this, I would highly recommend it. This has been another Game Nexus Arcade video, and I'll see you later. Bye.